Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon session of IGSHPA. We have a leadership panel in front of you today, and I am going to introduce them. First, we have Vitor Gregorio. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
North American Regional President, Bosch Thermal Technology. We have Mr. John Thomas, Water Furnace International, CEO. Michael Albertson, Senior Vice President, who we saw earlier today. Steve Smith, CEO, Intertech Global. Tim Wright, Residential Sales Manager, Intertech Global. And Lyndall Moore, National Sales Manager with Bosch Thermal Technology. Last but not least. So, yay! Can you guys feel the power, the brain power that's up here on the stage right now? It's pretty incredible. All the big boys are up here, that's right. So we are here today as a leadership panel for you, for your Q&A. There's a few things I'd like to go over right off the bat, some things that we need to be cautious of and wary of. One of those things that we are going to steer away from would be pricing. Any collusion, anything that goes along with pricing, we want to steer away from. Okay? The second would be anything divisive, anything between GEO or IGSHPA or Water Furnace and Intertech or vice versa. We're going to steer away from that. We're all here today to raise the tide. Every single one of our boats has to sit on that water. We just want that water to rise, okay? So it's an open session. We have an app. If you have your phone, you can open up your browser or your iPad to submit your questions. And it is IGSHPA.
Please don't submit any question.
You have a question?
I'm just going to send Vitor a question.
Okay. So it's IGSHPA, IGSHPA .socialqa.com. So IGSHPA.socialqa.com. And you can input a question. If you see a question on there that you were going to ask, you can bump it up. You can bring it up to the top. And I'm going to be pulling from that. We also have two live microphones, one over here and one right over there for Q&A. So anything that you're interested in arriving from this panel, feel free to use any one of those formats, or you can just flag me down with any Q&A. We're going to start off, unless anybody has a question that's burning in their minds right now. We're going to start off with one question that's already on here. And I'm going to start with Mr. Steve Smith, if that's okay. I know. You tried to sit further away thinking that you'd be further away. What trends do you see in the market in the residential and commercial geothermal heat pump market?
Right now, it's a little bit, I don't want to say uncharted waters or territory, but we've never had a tax credit before that expired. So what we've seen, I think, as an industry, is a lot of jobs wanted to be completed by the end of the year, or say they were completed by the end of the year, and so it brought on quite a busy 2016. Talking to a lot of you, loop installers, contractors, and all of us in the industry, we've probably seen a little bit of tail off here since the first of the year, just due to that timeline to where people were after the tax credit, wanting to get it done, and it gave us just a little bit slower time than we wanted. So we're seeing a downturn, but quite honestly, we've as you've heard this morning and in other presentations, we can be just fine without tax credits. We were before 2008. And before that, some of our best years were before that. So we see a little bit of a downturn, but I call that a temporary downturn, very temporary.
Wonderful. I'm going to skip over and go to Mr. Thomas. Any trends that you're picking up in the last 110 days in the geothermal heat pump industry?
Yeah, I guess the biggest trend that I've tried to dive into in the last couple of weeks here to understand is I feel like if you're out there selling on the energy economic side of the alternatives for home comfort or commercial comfort systems, I think you're really in the energy business. And I think what Michael portrayed this morning in terms of what's happened to natural gas we're operating at a 20-year low. I think it's certainly had an impact for the last 5-6 years with what's happened in fracking on squeezing the net benefit between, for a residential application, is what Michael showed the data on, the net benefit of a geo system or a ground source system versus natural gas heating. And I think that's going to turn around. I think that's going to open up for us in the next couple of years, and it's going to start seeing a trend here in the next few months based on what the plans are for natural gas. I would encourage everybody to keep your eye on something called the Clean Power Plan. It's controversial right now of whether that will progress or not based on the current administration, but if the Clean Power Plan gains traction and goes into adoption, that's significantly going to alter the power plant structure in the U.S. and going to make a significant impact on the overall demand of natural gas. So that would compound the export data that Michael was showing this morning on the infrastructure that's being put in place on liquefied natural gas. So I use that as an example of, I would encourage everyone to continue to educate yourself on a regular basis on what's going on in the energy markets, because I think it has an impact on how our teams are selling every day.
And Vitor, do you have any?
Well, I agree with what my panel colleagues just said. I think it's more a wait and see type of mood that the industry is going through right now, which is understandable. I think it's part of the regulatory freeze that we are at, also on a country perspective, politically speaking, and it's normal. So after the tax credit expiration, I think end consumers, contractors, and all stakeholders are kind of waiting to see what's happening afterwards. But I believe that this is a temporary stage. I think the industry is mature and experienced enough to develop itself towards the growth we all want. And I think picking on the CPP, the Clean Power Plan, that came from the previous administration, was a very aggressive and comprehensive plan to change the landscape of the energy footprint in North America and in the United States in this case. And I think we as an industry are an active part of that plan, above and beyond the focus that this will have now with the current administration. Definitely this is something that will come. The plan was to change dramatically the coal power plants until 2030, so it's not a short-term view, it's a long-term view, and I think this goes above and beyond the current administration. It's really a focus on energy that the main authorities of this country have, and we, as part of this industry, will benefit and will contribute to that as well. So I think it's a temporary wait-and-see period, and I foresee a brighter future for this industry in the years to come.
Thank you. I'll put this up for the panel, the whole table. How can the different brands work together to lift the industry for the good of the group?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I kind of covered that this morning, but I think what the industry really needs, I may hit it from 2 points, but I'll make my first point and then give someone else an opportunity to cover that. But I mentioned the need to bring the awareness for the consumer and to educate the consumer on the value proposition and the deliverables of geothermal heat pump systems. And that means whether it's residential consumer or a commercial consumer. But one reason that is so important is that I think as manufacturers across the board, we can use social media, we can use websites, we can use Twitter, we can use Facebook, we can use all the great social media things that we have at our fingertips today to further the education and awareness for that consumer, because it is going to be so much more difficult for if a consumer calls and says, okay, I'm going to be building a house, and they're talking to their builder and we want a geothermal heat pump system. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for that builder to try to, not provide them a geothermal heat pump system. The consumer's a customer. What's sales 101? You give the customer mostly what they ask for, okay? Maybe it was you give the customer what they asked for, but, and then you look at the contracting side. Say a consumer has a need for a retrofit on an existing home. So they call the contractor up and they say, well, you know, I need an HVAC system and I'm kind of looking into geothermal. I really don't understand it. That is going to give the salesperson that's sitting across the table talking to this homeowner an out. Well, okay, you don't quite understand it, so, you know, maybe either we don't offer geothermal heat pump systems, or we know our loop crew's busy and we're not going to be able to get the loop in for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We know it's going to be snowy, it's icy, it's rainy, it's whatever, and it's going to give them an opportunity to flip that consumer from a possible geothermal installation to a conventional system. We see it, we know it, it happens. So I really think one thing that all the manufacturers can unite on is a message and an invigorated campaign to educate that consumer and bring the awareness of geothermal heat pumps up to the consumer and make it easy for them to be better educated.
Anybody else?
I'd like to add to that. With that message, we need to simplify our message. We started out several years ago with a simple message. As the industry grew and more opportunities came, we kind of convoluted our message. But I see several different talks today about getting back to the basics, and if we could all get on the same page as what that basic message is, I think it would help us out. And then as we go after social media together, different things like that to spread the message.
Wonderful. Anybody else?
Yeah, Sean, I think the point that I would make is I think there's been wonderful collaboration at the geo level in Washington across the manufacturers. It's been really neat to see all of the major players and leaders stepping up in that role, you know, to help with the fight in Washington. But also at IGSHPA, as Michael pointed out this morning, look at all the different committees and all of the different dealers, drillers, manufacturers, distributors. Everybody's stepping up. So it's really nice to see, and I also want to commend everybody who is actively involved in their statewide geothermal association. I won't get into naming any names because there's a lot that's happening, but there is a groundswell that's happening across multiple states right now. And I commend each one of you and just ask that you continue to stay in the fight.
Wonderful, thank you. And once again, you can go to IGSHPA.socialqa.com to submit a question, or we have 2 microphones. Feel free to step up to either one of those if you do have a question. Okay, so how can IGSHPA help you moving forward from a manufacturing perspective?
Well, I can take that one. I think doing things like the one you're doing today is a major push. I think just giving us the opportunity to sit together as industry leaders or industry players and align ourselves in one voice above and beyond our competitive footprint gives us the opportunity to strengthen the industry and to strengthen the message that we want to convey, right? We just said that we believe in the technology, we believe in the benefits of this technology. We are proudly manufacturing this in North America. So I think the forum that was given to us to, one, understand what's going on in the market from the sessions and also from the presentations in the morning, and 2, also to convey message to you as stakeholders and participants of this market, definitely gives us the opportunity to strengthen our voice and to also to understand where the industry stands right now. So it's I'd say it's a moment of change, right? So we are going through the change, and I think we should understand us as players, understand the industry, at what we want to stand for and where we want to go. And the more powerful and the stronger IGSHPA is, the better for this industry. And I think you guys, and I mentioned to Michael and to John this morning, I think what you guys did in this conference shows already an evolution of what IGSHPA is. This is my second conference. I attended in October 2015 in Kansas and now. And, you know, right from the preparation, the discussion, and the motto, the presentations, the sessions, I think it's a new era. And I think you guys did a great job. And that's what we should do.
It's exciting. You can go louder than that if you want. You've got to wake some people up after lunch. You can clap louder. Anybody else?
I would just comment, Sean, I think Michael touched on it this morning as part of the takeaway or the challenge, and that is it's about collaborative communication and innovative development on where are the barriers, whether you're talking about the commercial space or the residential space. And it's not just about collaborating here in this session, which is a start, but it's about building a network across the industry of the different stakeholders that make a geo application and installation successful, and how do we learn more from each other. I think the other area that I would comment on is I think there's a shift taking place on consumer buying trends, and maybe a couple of the presenters talked about it this morning, but there's 10,000 baby boomers a day turning 65, and those baby boomers are moving on into their retirement years, and they're out of the consumer cycle. And the consumer cycle, by most economists, is defined like ages 28 through 45, when we're all raising our families, we're buying bigger houses, we're buying more cars, we're buying all the consumer things that define the standard of living that we live for here in this society. And the Xers are not going to have a very long run based on the demographics of being the primary consumers, and the millennials by 2030 will define more than half of the consumer profile across the U.S. market, is what the statistics say. And the millennials are going to be buying and making buying decisions very differently than today's current demographic we talk about of a 45 to 65 demographic that buys geo. And I think it's going to be more purpose-driven about the impact on the environment and the efficiency, and how they have a more predictable view of how they consume energy going forward. And I think that's going to drive a very different dynamic in HVAC, and I think that's one of our key windows of opportunity to step into with the technology in this industry. So I would ask us to keep that trend in the back of our mind as you're putting your marketing plans together on how to touch and influence consumers.
Wonderful.
I just have a couple thoughts on this. One is R&D. We've got to remember that IGSHPA really kind of evolved as an R&D tool for the industry, and we do not have any expectation from manufacturers for IGSHPA to develop state-of-the-art moonshot type controls and things like that for water source heat pumps or geothermal heat pumps. But where IGSHPA cut its teeth many years ago, and they've been darn good at it, is R&D on the loop side. If you look at the component that is required, unless you go with an open loop system, it's required for every geothermal heat pump system that there is, something called the ground loop. So I think IGSHPA could help the manufacturers and also help the membership by maybe concentrating a little bit more on the R&D for the loop side. The other two are real simple. Keep your training up. Great training program. Train tons of people. You saw the professionals on the list in my slide and also Roshan's slide this morning, the number of folks that have been trained and certified. And then also do not lose track as far as the importance goes for standards. Standards is very, very important. I look at standards that they stamp out stupidity. They keep people from doing something that is just not quite right. So in a nutshell, R&D, concentrate on loops, training, and standards.
Great. Another question here. How can the different brands work together to sell the major electric utilities on possibilities of loop leasing to the customers. Any thoughts on that?
I'll go ahead and start, I guess. Actually, my background, I started in the utility side in electric co-op in Southwest Illinois. And, back in the early 80s, I was trying to figure out a way how to keep people in an all-electric house with nuclear power issues that we were involved in a nuclear power plant, and our rates were going through the roof. So I have a little bit of history with that subject. But as we evolve now into 30, 35 years later, what we've found, I think, as an industry, we've seen in most utilities, and I don't want to paint a broad brush and say all utilities are all co-ops, but in a lot of electric investor-owned utilities, we've lost their marketing departments are farmed out to other companies or they contract other people out. There's been a big shift in the utility side for the promotion of geothermal or other energy uses and things that I guess a lot of us cut our teeth on back then. And I do believe there's a way to somehow re-engage with the utilities to show them the benefits of geothermal, not just leasing or owning the loop and leasing it back to the consumer. It becomes a utility at that point. They can that becomes part of their physical plant. They can depreciate it. They can do a easement, to control the loop right there. It could pass with the home if it sells. But if we could get some utilities to jump on board with that, it's not only a revenue generator for the utility on just that loop part, but remember, let's go back to the basics of what geothermal provides a utility in reducing the demand on the grid and the power plants they have to have in the future. So it's a double win for the utilities, and it's a great win for our industry. So that is a tough one that we've seen. A lot of us in this room have brought that up to many utilities. We're struggling getting traction. Although I guess I can say there was a conference, Ontario G Association had a meeting 3 weeks ago, and the natural gas company, not the electric utility, the natural gas company is looking into pilot projects of owning the loops and leasing them back. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's thinking outside the box, that's for sure. Anybody else on electric utilities, co-ops, further partnership?
I think in my opinion, what was told in terms of cooperation and collaboration to increase outreach and awareness of this industry in the energy footprint or in the energy efficiency footprint is applicable to utilities as well. I think the more we work on get this industry or this technology known with the benefits that it brings to end consumers, with long lifespan, with energy efficiency, with peace of mind. This is, of course, also interesting to utilities. They are, middlemen. They are enablers to end consumers. And, just with the example of thinking out of the box, I think we have examples also of utilities, water utilities, thinking out of the box, utilizing geothermal system, using the water as source of energy. So we have examples, and I think we should probably communicate those examples more often to the industry and to you as stakeholders. And you guys, you'll be the word of mouth of this industry. You are actually the word of mouth of this industry. You are closer to end consumers than we are. And you will always be, if you're a contractor, you'll always be closer than we as manufacturers. So I think we should work together on this outreach.
To add a little bit to that, I listened to so much presentation about organizing to lobby. I think we could do a better job of organizing to lobby utilities, formulating a single message. And we're all attacking it from different angles. But if we had a foundation to push together, I think it would maybe make us more efficient.
Okay. All right, the next question that screamed its way to the top with the most votes. I'm not going to say one of the words, but what is the appetite today for joint advertising to improve the consumer awareness for our industry?
It's really good for Intertech because we're the smaller company.
So you have a large appetite with it, yeah.
We think
okay.
it's great. I'll go ahead, since I had to pull a little funny there. That one is a difficult one, and I think that message, it's everybody's got their marketing department. We've discussed some things amongst manufacturers, how to grow, the things we've talked about already, how to grow the market, how to create awareness. One of the things I use a lot of times is with the tennis shoe. Nike and the swoosh wouldn't be near as popular if they had to invent the tennis shoe. But they redefined something that was already there and popular and moved it forward. We struggle with the geothermal technology because people aren't aware of it. Most of the time when people don't put in a geothermal system, it's not because they chose not to. It's because they didn't know it was a choice to do it. And that's still our struggle. So if there was a way that we could generic message, through GEO or through IGSHPA to generic message, I think would be fantastic, because none of us will ever, all the manufacturers in the country, we will never get beyond that 0.75% or whatever percent that is as individual companies trying to sell our brand of product. When we talk to people or consumers, my goal for contractors and the like is to don't go out and be a salesman to somebody. Educate them. Be a consultant. Let me educate you first. I don't want to try to come in and sell you my product. I want to come in and educate you on what a geothermal system is and what it can do for you. And I think that's the common message that we need to do as an industry and as manufacturers across the board. But answer specific to the question, I think the only way to really do that is through GEO, that is an industry organization that's already set up, or IGSHPA, something that's already set up, and we channel through that for that common message that is generic and promotes geothermal.
Think of a Got Milk campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, similar to that. Anybody else on joint advertising?
Sean, the only thing I would add to that would be in our first meeting this morning that we had with Kyle of HVAC News, there are some different things that we are going to kick around. And so that is a question that's obviously been brought to the panel here, and it's rose up through the ranks. So I think that will get the necessary attention that it deserves. But I know that there's already been discussion of if we're all going to be at the same show, such as IBS, different shows like that, does it make sense to have an industry, one voice, rather than multiple messages out there, let alone the marketing dollars that are all laid out there by every manufacturer? So I know that's in discussion as well.
Maximizing the effort of every dollar spent. Okay, anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I'll just comment, Sean. I think it's something that's, I won't say it's a must-do. I think it depends on how quickly you want to try to grow that niche out of that very quiet little blue slice on the pie chart that Michael had of 0.75%. And you got to think about the marketing dollars and the promotion that this industry is up against with the big 7 unitary players in the market, or what somebody like Daikin is doing all over the globe, which is convincing the entire commercial market that VRF is the only way to go. And it's their investment on what they've invested on marketing VRF has left the Hydronics Association on the commercial side, I think, a little bit into the shadow. And so it's a big question to me for this industry, and I think we have to have an appetite to join forces on technology and industry and environmental promotion for high-efficient comfort systems independent of brand. And if we don't get after that and find a way to mobilize on it across a relatively small group of folks and other channel partners, I think the industry in that little blue slice that Michael had this morning is going to stay in that shadow.
Okay.
It's an interesting question. I mean, I agree with what you said. It's it's easier saying than doing, I would say, right? So I think, you know, the necessity and the appetite should be here, but I think the brands should really step aside of that message. I think the message should come from an independent institution that serves as an umbrella. And the more unbiased and the more independent the message is, the more powerful it becomes. Because you don't have brand A or manufacturer A or B telling you to buy my product or other product. It's an industry telling you, look, this system is better, is more efficient, it will last longer than others, and it brings you the benefits A, B, or C. And I think we should probably start thinking on how to do that through the institution that we all represent. I think that message is even more powerful than when the brands just sit together and say, oh, four or five brands are now trying to convey a message. And I think when it gets diluted, when it's an institution that is impartial, unbiased, independent, that of course represents some manufacturers, but is the institution, the institutional voice of the industry telling the end consumers, look, this is a technology that you should pay attention. Right? So I think that message is much more powerful.
Well, similar to like a pork council, right? It's an independent council, right? Same thing with the Got Milk.
Sorry, Michael.
And Michael had something?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question with a question. I know one individual sent it in, maybe a couple folks sent a question in similar to that, but I guess my question is looking at the crowd that we have in front of us. I mean, you have a bank of manufacturers up here, but looking at the crowd, we have architects, we have contractors, we have loop contractors, mechanical, utilities, engineers, so on and so forth. How many of you believe a united message national ad campaign to grow consumer awareness and education would be a good idea?
About 88%. 88%.
So my next question is, everybody is in the revenue chain of some way, somehow. Whether you're designing the building, you're designing the system, you're installing the equipment, you're installing the loop, whether it goes on your utility. So my next question, you kind of set yourself up, didn't you? So my next question is, how many of you would actively participate or be willing to fund a national awareness and advertising plan? Let me see a raise of hands.
99%. 99%.
There are a lot less hands.
A little less.
Okay, we're going to have an altar call.
Well, to kind of further that is that, I'm definitely speaking to the choir here right now, because we are here, and we're members of IGSHPA and GEO and the like. Okay, so I'm definitely talking to the choir, but I'll say this, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but we have been a fragmented industry if you think about it. And we've struggled with that same consistent message, and sometimes almost fighting amongst ourselves, or, hey, this is my part of the world, and I don't want anybody within 100 miles installing geothermal inside my 100-mile radius. And, we've struggled with a lot of that. A lot of the other things we've struggled with is, as Michael said, kind of stepping out there. And, how many members of IGSHPA do we have, and how many have we lost over the years? Okay, and the same with GEO, and we struggle with that. When you look at Sean, you mentioned Got Milk and the Pork Council. One of them that really catches my attention is the propane industry. Mm-hmm. For the propane industry to have the kind of leverage in advertising and promotion that they've got. Remember the guy with the white T-shirts and the electricity guy getting shocked all the time, and some of those things they put out there. Believe me, there's more than just a handful of their industry that belongs to that organization. It's probably 90, 95 to 100% that are coming to the table with that unified message, the funding that it takes, and hey, jump on my wagon, let's go. So there's, we've got some work to do ourselves, but I know I'm preaching to the choir because we're here.
It's true, and we're starting down that road, like you had mentioned earlier, with the collaboration that we're seeing over the last 2 years. It's getting closer to that. Anybody else?
Sean, just a comment that I would have is, please don't walk away from here, though, depressed that you're not doing your job. Because the people sitting in this room have an incredible passion for this industry. So again, from the dealer level, the drillers, the distributors, the manufacturers, the architects, engineers, when you stop and think about it, over the past 5 years, there's been close to 1 million water source heat pump and geothermal units sold in 5 years. That's nothing to be taken lightly. And I know Michael had shared this morning that you referenced over 5 million that have been installed since the 70s. That's incredible. So continue, please continue to do what you do at the grassroots level. And then maybe there's some takeaways that we can pull from this. But I love the question, Michael. I don't know if anybody clapped after your second question, Michael.
I saw 2 hands.
Yeah, but
Lot of hands
these
went
lights are pretty bright, though. It's kind of hard to see.
That's right.
All right, we're going to jump to another question here that's scaled to the top. Part of the solar industry's success seems to come from the data they've used to justify their impact on society. What is our industry doing to quantify the benefit we have on jobs, the economy, the grid, and the community?
Nothing.
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah, we've looked into it several times, and it's back to cost and the ability to do those third-party studies, and it is what it's probably going to take is third-party and a legit study on it. We've went in and we've talked to legislators, and we've estimated how many jobs are touched when one residential geothermal goes in. But I think the main reason we have not been able to do that, I really believe, is funding. To be able to go out and it's not an inexpensive venture.
It's definitely a takeaway from us. I think we need more data even for our decisions. I think the more you know, the best you decide, right? So I think that's something we should think as a takeaway from this session. I think we should walk away also with some reflections, right? It's not only answering, it's also taking, and that's something at least I'll take on my account, on my end, to think about what I can do different to really have more accuracy and more data available, to share with the industry so we can know better what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We all individually as companies, we kind of try to crank that data out and do some data mining and come up with the numbers as best as we possibly can. But as far as, we have to do that from a planning process and figuring out how to get strategies together and sales plans and so on and so forth moving forward. However, as an industry or as an association or associations, we really haven't done that. There just hasn't been a focus on it. And I'll tell you one thing that really kind of resonates is that whenever we go to Capitol Hill and we're talking to 11 or 12 congressmen each day, one of the things that resonates with them is that if you can put an estimated number of, so if you're talking to a congressman in a specific state or specific region within that state, and you can float some numbers out, even though they're estimated, and let them know they're estimated. You don't want to use the word fat finger, but they're estimated numbers, okay? That resonates with them because those are jobs that could be directly impacted by our industry, positively or negatively. So I think there's a need out there for that, so that we're all saying the same thing.
Well, I know in one of the breakout sessions that I heard, there's proof in going to that congressperson or decision maker, but there's more proof in the pudding when you bring them to a job. And they're talking to the homeowner, they're talking to the driller, they're talking to the HVAC contractor, they're talking to the local constituents. It echoes a lot further.
But I think that's the bait. That's the bait to get them there. That kind of data, that kind of information. If you can substantiate it in a professional manner, because they don't want to take a risk. So I think there's great merit in having that kind of data available to everybody to push the agenda.
All right, here's an interesting one. In Europe, the heat pump industry works as one, not ground source versus air source, for the good of the whole. Would it make sense to partner with air source to gain more mass, or would that hurt us? That was a good one.
Can we come back? Can we come back at you on that one after break?
Can you what?
Can we come back at you on that one after break?
Yeah, you want to circle that one?
I think that that is definitely a hard one to answer. I'm not sure I do have an answer for it. I guess the comment I would have, just off the surface, just now hearing the question, is a very good one. I do believe that heat pump technology itself is misunderstood. It's not well known, and I guess any additional assistance to promote the heat pump technology would be a good thing. Again, that's just off the cuff.
It could be a good thing, right?
Yeah, it could be.
Anybody have any comments?
I don't have a clear answer to that question. I think, the landscape in Europe varies significantly from the landscape here in this technology, and also varies amongst specific countries. And we heard this morning from Sweden, but if you go to the southern countries of Europe, it's a technology that definitely is not developed, is not known. Right, so it's a different landscape, and I think if you put Europe all together, all the countries all together, and then you compare to the United States, I mean, it's really a gut feeling estimation, but I think the picture wouldn't be that different in terms of market share or share of penetration of this technology. Now, I don't want to evade the question. I don't know if that's good or bad. I think that's a good question for us to think. But my takeaway would be, let's get stronger now with information we have now, with the players we have now, before we partner with someone else. I mean, maybe a gut feeling answer, but I don't know if I'm closing a door that might help us, or we should leave that door ajar. So I don't have a clear position on that, honestly.
Okay.
I would say that they're different. They're just a different sale, or a different customer base, a different application. I think I see it. I see there's I do have some experience in it. I see a separation of the sales argument and the installation. So I see it'd be hard to merge the two together and make them one, because Geo has a lot more upside and advantages to it, and it's more technical.
Okay. We have about a little over 10 more minutes. If you want to go to the IGSHPA.socialqa.com and up some of those questions, if you want to vote for them to get them to the top. Do you think consumer lack of awareness is because geothermal heat pumps are confused with big G, geothermal steam energy? Do you think there's a confusion in the market between the two?
You mean high temp, low temp?
Yep. Generation versus conservation?
I think that depends on where you're at. I definitely know that when I'm working in Nevada, I say ground source heat pump. Mm-hmm. You say geothermal and around Reno, and it's geothermal. There you can see the plant off to the in the horizon there. But that is definitely one that we've struggled with, again, as an industry over the years. Is it ground source? Is it geothermal? Remember, that's how GeoExchange came about. Was what do we call ourselves? What do we do? So to answer directly, I think in most places people understand geothermal heating and cooling in most places of the country more than ground source. I think that's just kind of evolved over the last, again, 30 years for the most part. And I don't think it confuses with high temp geothermal unless you get into some of those states that do have that resource.
Okay, anybody else? Nope.
I don't see so much confusion on the geo word part of it. I see it on the heat pump part of it versus air source. Everybody's heard of a heat pump, but then that's that second educational process, message process of where the ground source is and what's the difference between an air source. And I see, we still got work to do in that arena.
Okay. Well, this one has jumped to the top. If we don't need tax credit, I'm assuming, to be successful long-term, what are your thoughts on using the GEO organization funds for advertising or impact studies?
Well, we've talked about that one before. I'll go ahead and take off with that one too. Geothermal on its heating and cooling systems stand on their own merits. We've beat that up today so far. We all know it. We understand it. That's why we're here. However, the time we've had the tax credit has not been in the best economic times. Solar and wind did get it, and so we feel we have a good opportunity to go ahead and get us attached back to 48A and 25 Cap D. And if we can get that accomplished, that is a big shot in the arm for the next 3 years with the 2 year phase out, 2 years of phase out after that. And that will help us. But at the same time, I truly do believe that we should start looking at other ways. Lobbying is not what we've been all about. And I believe there's other ways that we need to promote our technology, our industry, to make it more mainstream. And that would be through the things we talked about, collective advertising, promotion, the studies of what, job creation, what we're doing. A couple weeks ago when we were in D.C., I just used a $30,000 geothermal installation. I said, the government's giving back $9,000. I said, now let's go through and talk about how much income tax all those workers paid, the company profits that they paid income taxes on. I said, this is not costing the government $9,000. I said, but I don't know that number, so I have to estimate. But anyway, I do believe it's something that we're such on the cusp of that we shouldn't walk away from it, but at the same time look to the horizon and not just walk off a cliff either.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think GEO is a potential logical forum to utilize in terms of creating the collaborative market awareness initiative that we were talking about earlier, and I think that's what the question's pointing at. Mm-hmm. I think a strategic question that we need to answer across that organization, and it may impact this organization, is if we're successful in getting an extension to the tax credit, how would we utilize that benefit in the industry differently than we have the tax credit that's been in place for the last 8 years to propel the industry beyond the end of the tax credit and grow it faster? I think that's a strategic question that we all need to reflect on. And that's not just the manufacturers, that's all the channel partners and all the stakeholders, because we'll need everybody's help if we're going to fund a industry-based initiative and do it in a different way than it's been done in the past to get a different result.
Maximize the results. Anybody else?
Also, an interesting point on that is just an offshoot is if you look at the housing stock across the United States right now, they're saying over 52% of the homes in the United States are 20 years or older. Now just stop and think about that for a minute. 52% of all the homes across the United States are 20 years or older. What's getting ready to break? What's getting ready to fail? Right on. Or the air conditioner, or the heat pump. We have an incredible opportunity in front of us now, especially with the numbers that Michael had showed us this morning, to watch. If propane, natural gas take off, that's going to be an immediate benefit for this industry as well.
All right, I think we have time for one, maybe two. Has there been, in your eyes and your views, much interaction with the EPA or the DOE?
No.
Coming in objectively after 100 days, I would say I don't see any evidence of interaction between the EPA or the DOE.
Okay.
I think part of that could be based on the recent dynamics in Washington and how the DOE and the EPA are being, I'll say, refocused. But I would ask others that have been here longer, maybe what's happened over prior years and how that's helped the industry.
Yeah, it's been minimal at best. I think we have a good relationship with EPA and some of the things we're working with them on, but nothing to really, sometimes it's a lot of times in defense more than offense with EPA. And I don't mean that negative for the most part. DOE, Ted, I'm going to look at you and not if I'm right or wrong, but I thought there's like one person in DOE that will have something to do with the geothermal heating and cooling system, and he has like 10 other technologies that he is also in charge of. So I think we have 1/10 of one person at DOE. And again, that's an estimate, but I don't think I'm exaggerating much. There's not a lot of assistance there and collaboration.
Okay. Does anybody have any live questions on the microphone?
Is we guess at what we're doing. We guess at how many installations we have. We guess at where they are because no one ever recorded it. As people know, I was director of the Geothermal Heat Pump Consortium, and we might have captured maybe a year of that. With utility involvement, if we want utility involvement, if we want third-party involvement, we're going to have to capture metrics. So we're going to have a program that says, Steve Smith's people put in XYZ in Phil Shane's house. It was 3 tons. It was this, that, and the other thing. We promised this. It's going to deliver that. Would all the manufacturers agree that they would buy into that type of capture? It doesn't have to be any collusion or anything else. It's just having your people, whether they be installers, dealers, or whomever, give a compository of where things are going. Whenever, I think Michael just said it, we always guess at what we're doing. We're telling them we have 0.75. The problem with our industry is we bury everything. I can tell you where a solar panel is. I can tell you where a wind farm is. I can't tell you where a geothermal system is. So if we created a program that said everybody's got to register their job. Everybody's got to inspect their job because really what's going to kill us is bad jobs. We've got to document what's been done, and we've got to evaluate that. So when the utility, if they want to own loops, they can say, we've captured, we've done this. We deserve X amount of credits, or we've gotten...
Jack, is there a question?
The question is, would they participate in that type of program?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would. Actually, 6.5 years ago, right here in Denver at the IGSHPA meeting, we had a geo board discussion, and back then we were trying to find ways to monitor the systems where they were at and do some logging, and we just never really got anywhere with it, cost and adding more cost to the units and everything else. I'll let the rest of the panel kick in on this one, but I do believe, Jack, that I think with the technology that's coming, that's here now with some and coming with others, is that we're going to know where those units are because we're going to be able to talk to them talk to them, and I think we will find out a lot of that information. That will be almost everyday knowledge. So I think what we tried to do 10 years ago has now evolved into what can become just part of the geothermal control, or the system controls for monitoring, but really, for troubleshooting, checking, on change of temperature, all those kind of things. So I think it's evolving and coming that direction, but it has been a long road on that part.
I think we kind of answered that question before, Jack. I think we all recognize that data mining and the market intelligence that we have as of now is not sufficient, and I personally take that on my own to understand how I and my company can contribute more to have more additional or better, not more data, but better data available. And I agree, it's today it's information era. Everything it's on your fingertip. That's the distance between knowledge and not knowing anything. So it's just go to your phone, go to Wikipedia, go to Google. So we should be able to get more information. But I think today, at least in my opinion, I share that with Michael already, in his keynote speech, he brought quantitative data, real factual data that I think, at least for me, was good to see. There is data available, and we should lean on facts and not on impressions to take decisions, right? So I think, I mean, what Michael shared with us this morning is a good example of not only experience, which I assume you have tons of that, but also factual data that was put in front of us. So I think that's a good example of things we should individually as a company and collectively as an association to pursue more often.
Great, thank you. Before we wrap up, I know Rashawn had... Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we get everybody to their breakout sessions. I know Rashawn had one thing to do and safe at second base. What's going on? No? No? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. One overarching rule in any energy project is do the energy conservation first before you size the renewable. An example would be, of course, LED lights before you put on the PV on the roof could reduce your cost of the renewable by 50%. One question I have to you is that what are you doing as manufacturers and also as an organization to train and work with the engineering community that's designing the inside of the building so that you can reduce the cost of the well field outside of the building?
I think for our company and the folks we work with is that is a very good point too, is that we do work on reducing the load of the building before we size the loop to the building and the equipment. So we do make that conscious effort, but we don't have I can't say we have a program or anything like that, but that is a very good subject, because many times on a commercial definitely is just exponentially that much more you're saving in loop installation or loop cost and equipment. But also even on the residential side, many times if you make those energy improvements, you can take a home that would maybe be a 5-ton, can you take it down to a 3-ton? It's very possible. On a commercial project, can you take it from 100 down to 80? Well, the cost to make those improvements to reduce that 20 tons is way less than paying for that 20 tons. And then guess what? If you don't do that, you're paying for that additional load forevermore after that. So it's a very good point, and it's something we do try to work with. But there's no program that I know of or concerted effort across the industry.
The CGD program actively takes that into account and stresses that for the design of the ground loop for interactive building modeling to get your ground loop size. And those of us that design ground loops for commercial systems are always working with the architect, the end user, and we've all got countless examples. I've got jobs all over Colorado, for example. We've gone from like 100 holes to 50 holes just because of those reasons. So IGSHPA's already got that covered, guys.
Okay, thank you very much.
CGD class does.
All right, well, with that, Rashawn, we're going to skip that. Okay. Well, how about a round of applause for our distinguished panel? Thank you very much. That concludes our session today.